And then, so what does an accountant do with the rest of his year? Because people have this thought, and some have this thought that accountants work, 4 months out of the year, then they go off to the golf course and,
That's the goal. That's the
eventually,
goal.
right?
There are some accountants and tax preparers that make a lot of money during tax season. Maybe $250,000, $500,000 just between, January and May. I'm not one of those guys yet. Hopefully
Yes.
I will get there.
Yes.
However, when tax season is over, they just take the rest of the 6 months and just go on vacation. They travel the world and just kind of do what they want to do. Again, like I said, I don't have that privilege just yet, but what I do, I usually take whatever earnings we have from tax season, and me and my better half, as you said, we take a vacation.
Yes.
And try to relax a little while. And then the rest of the year, I have my own, bookkeeping and accounting business,
Right.
where I have, some clients that have me doing their financials and, like I said before, their compliance forms and workers' comp applications and, City of LA and state stuff and, other stuff going on.
Right. I was thinking that, there's a lot of people who file extensions.
Yes.
And so then on the other side of the year, you have this mad rush to making sure they get their taxes in by the second deadline.
Correct.
So what are those deadlines?
The deadline that you're mentioning is I don't want to say an automatic. Now, California gives you an automatic extension. But the IRS gives you an additional 6-month extension if you ask for it.
Okay.
Now, you have to be careful because if you owe, penalties and interest will accrue between April 15th and October 16th.
Right.
So if you do owe, you still need to write the check and send it into the IRS, or at least you should.
Right.
Okay. And then when you actually do the reporting and the filing, they at least see that the payment was made on time.
Right.
Okay. But the deadline is middle of October.
So now, is that an estimate of what you owe? Or, you know what I mean? Like, is it an estimate of what you owe that you're writing the check for? Because if you haven't done your taxes,
How do you know?
how do you know?
Ultimately, yes.
Okay.
Ultimately, yes. In some situations, depending on the person's net worth, there can be elements where they at least need to match what their tax responsibility was the prior
year.
Yeah. Another thing that they can do is figure out what their earnings were for the year in question, and then they can look at a publication 17, determine what their tax obligation would be, and then, like you said, send in, an estimate
Right.
about it. I'd certainly rather be off by, $800,000 perhaps than not send anything,
Right.
and then wind up having penalties and
This
interest
huge
and things like that.
penalty at the end.
Which are, certainly prohibitive.
Exactly. So you don't get out of paying your taxes because you got an extension.
No.
You still have to pay them by April 15th.
Right.
The extension comes with the itemization of your tax returns.
Right.
And you can get that part of it in by October 15th.
Yeah.
Now, is there any leeway for corporations and nonprofits?
Honestly, I'm sure there are, but I'm not certain what they are.
Okay.
You got me. You got me stumped on that one.
That's okay. You'll call me back and let me know what
I'll
those
let you know.
answers are. Of course you will.
When does interest start to accrue on tax payments? Like if you owe money, you talked about interest, and obviously penalties begin after taxes are due.
I
But
think it's a month.
a month.
I think it's a month. Yeah, if you haven't paid it and gotten it in by middle of May, then that's when I think the penalties and things begin to start. And a lot of times, now with the whole, plastic age and things, you can make your credit card, you can pay your taxes with credit cards or certain things, and I suggest that because some cases you might be able to get some points and things on some credit cards. I know some credit cards don't do it, but
Right.
I think some also do allow the points and the benefits.
Yeah, sure. If you have the money to pay it off and not pay the interest on the credit card, then yeah, definitely, because it's a nice chunk of money to get the points on for sure.
Yeah. Again, depending on what it is, I'm not going to say that it's the right thing to do for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
I just know I freaked out about the quarterly estimated tax payments that I hear about or that I've heard about. And I freaked out about them and talked to an accountant about it because I was like, I don't even know, like, this is my first full year in business. I don't even really know, like, what I made last year. I did, but it wasn't representative of my business at this point or at that point last year. But anyways, I remember I was freaking out about having to make those quarterly estimated tax payments. And at the end of the conversation, he was like, you don't need to at all. Like, you're going to probably, like, my business situation was, which is exactly what happened. I pretty much broke even on the taxes to where I didn't owe anything, but I didn't really get anything.
Right.
But, and by I didn't really get anything, it was actually really, like, I got, like, such a pathetic amount. It was ridiculous. But I was just happy that I didn't owe anything.
Didn't owe anything, yes.
So it would have been
That's the
silly
goal.
for me to make those estimated tax payments is the moral of that story, because for what? I didn't owe anything. I mean, I guess they can go towards future years or something. I don't know how that works.
They can be. What I do for my business clients is when I complete their financials, if they enjoyed a profit for that particular month, I will take an automatic, usually it's 40%, and I put it in a liability account. You know, and that way the person can look at their financial statements and see, well, I made a profit, but I also see that even though there's, $8,000 in the bank, $2,000 of it belongs to the IRS.
Right.
Because it's a liability account that I typically name income taxes payable.
Right.
And if they're going to be diligent enough to look at their financials and they can see who they owe and what they owe, then, they can let that money pile up. And even though it looks great in the bank to see a huge amount of money, you still know in the back of your mind,
You got to give it
it's
back.
really not mine.
Exactly.
And that, can help soothe some of the pain.
Yes. Yes, and that's exactly what I ended up. That was the advice that I was given, was to, put aside this percentage of whatever it is that you make, and just don't touch it, knowing that you're going to end up having to use it for taxes at one point or another. If it's not next year, it's probably, at some point you're going to need to do it.
Right. And if you do have to make quarterly payments, you should make the quarterly payments, because there are penalties if you should be making them and you don't.
Right.
I've seen just this year, I've actually noticed several clients who had relatively high incomes for the year, and they should have been making those quarterly payments, and they didn't. And then there's a little, couple $100 that they had added to their tax liability because they didn't make those quarterly payments.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to make sure that my guys, for this year are sending something in every quarter.
Right. So that does answer our next question, which is, what advice do you give people? What advice would you give someone about their next year taxes that they can do this year, starting now, so that they don't have a nightmare or a small blooper or whatever it turns out to be for next year? Because, if you've already blown it for last year and you've incurred penalties and all of that because you should have been paying quarterly. And so what are some of the tips that you would give a business owner that they can start with now? I'd say my tip is get a bookkeeper. That's my tip. Okay. And just go find out how much it costs.
Right.
And, don't limit yourself because you're not sure of how much the cost is, because the greater cost is paying taxes that you may or may not have the money for because you spent it all because you didn't hire a bookkeeper, right? So,
it's all a matter of that person's level of diligence and responsibility and discipline. The most important thing that they can do is keep good records. It's a funny thing. When we were here last, I said on an individual basis, stop swiping the credit card.
Right.
Or stop swiping the debit card.
That was our piece of advice last time.
Right.
Yes.
But for business, in a lot of ways, it's good to do that.
Right.
Because now when you give your bookkeeper the bank statement, he can see all of the transactions and the expenses that
Yeah.
ran through the business.
Yes.
You see, instead of maybe a small, business owner paying for certain things out of his pocket with cash, or, buying gasoline, which is a deductible expense, but he didn't keep the receipt and he lost it and it's in the other pair of pants, and, all those different kind of things. If it's put on a debit card or a credit card, there's a track record of it.
Right.
You see, which makes life a lot easier for most people. So the first thing that I would say is, just be very, very true to yourself and decide, how diligent am I going to be
Exactly.
with this engagement and with this thing that I'm trying to build? Am I going to spend all the time in the kitchen and make the best cookies in town? Or am I going to recognize that there's also another responsibility in place in making sure that the administrative components of the business are being met? You see, those responsibilities have to be handled as well.
That's right.
And if you're not going to do that, then you need to be very, very certain that you've got someone who is watching
Right.
that part of your
That
store.
part of your store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to do it, get somebody to do it.
Exactly.
If you are going to do it, then just keep good, sound records and, provide that information to your accountant or your bookkeeper, and, they'll make sure that everything works out well for you.
Now, and the peace of mind that goes along with knowing that things are taken care of have to be more important. I don't know if more important is the right way to put it, but it has to be, as far as your peace of mind is concerned, it has to be somewhere up in the top 5 of reasons to make sure when you start a business that you go and talk to a bookkeeper, talk to an accountant, and see from the beginning what you should do. And if you haven't, then at this point, make it your priority to go see someone, just to make sure that you're doing the things necessary to keep you out of trouble, because the IRS does not give you a pass for not knowing.
Right.
Exactly. You still pay. You learn the hard way, as they say, because you're learning with your purse, your pocketbook, your wallet.
I'd like to preface that level of peace of mind that you mentioned, because it's certainly there, but it has to be a tempered peace of mind.
Right.
You can't hire a bookkeeper and then just kind of wash your hands of all
Oh,
responsibility
no.
and say, oh, well, Corey's got it.
Right.
I don't have to worry about it. I can get in my Corvette and drive to
off
Vegas.
into the sunset.
Yeah, and drive off into the sunset, knowing that he's got everything in place.
Right.
You see, because I like to drive the Corvette too sometimes.
That's right.
I might decide, well, you know what, I just don't feel like doing it anymore. So, I'm gonna just take my own little vacation and screw everything.
Yeah.
And that hopefully that never happens. But at the same time, I have my own problems, my own business, and other responsibilities. And you can't give an account, like we were saying earlier, you can't give me your stuff April 14th and then just kind of abandon all responsibility behind everything.
That's
because
right.
I'm just as human as the next person.
That's
and I
right.
can make a mistake or forget to carry the one. And, if you're not, going to care about your own business as much as I'm trying to care about your business, and we have a real problem at the most fundamental level.
Right.
You still have to say, well, yeah, I gave it to Corey to do, and I trust that he'll do a good job. But I still have to be responsible enough to look at what he did and make sure that it got put in the mail and got time stamped properly or emailed before certain deadlines.
Right.
I'm not just or no accountant is just a catch-all, here, take it, good luck, and you're not my get out of jail free card.
Right. Yeah. And that's a very good point, is that just because you hire an accountant, just because you hire a bookkeeper, as great as Corey is,
tries to be,
there's a human factor.
Absolutely.
And, you have to, if it's your business, you have to pay attention to it, and you may not want to, but it's certainly something that should be done, because ultimately, the small business owner is the one who's going to be held responsible for whatever mistakes or lack thereof are. I've certainly paid in the past, because an accountant did my accounting, and 2 years later the IRS came back to me and said, hello, this wasn't in there.
Right.
And so ding, 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 and you're like, wait a minute, I gave him everything. Well, no, you didn't.
Right.
You may have left out that, one 1099 or that one whatever. And so you have to diligently make sure that you are keeping track as much as you can of your business and your personal taxes as well. Yeah. And that the things that you're giving your accounting, the information that comes out is only as good as the information that goes in.
Absolutely.
So you can't hold someone responsible for your ultimate success. But it's sure nice to have an accountant around to help, Korey.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
Definitely nice.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, if you allow me to, one big problem that I'm experiencing right now.
Okay.
As communication and technology becomes more and more informal because of text messages and emails and cell phones and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to realize that a lot of my clients ignore my emails and ignore my texts like, I'm the homie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you really can't ignore the accountant.
That's very true.
When the accountant who's, watching your money
yes,
is calling you or sending you an email or a text message,
you can't
ignore
them.
Me.
No.
And I'm finding myself now in a situation to where I'm sending some of those corporate clients who have 11 days to file.
Get it together.
Yeah, I'm sending them emails. I'm sending them text messages. Hey, I need your stuff.
Right.
And at some point in time, I'm going to throw my hands up and say, you know what? I've sent you several emails. I've sent you several text messages. I've called and left voicemails. I've done everything as far as reasonable due diligence to get your stuff. Yeah. And if you just look at your cell phone and look at your emails and be like, oh, whatever,
I'll get back to him.
Right. Then that can cost you.
Exactly.
I'm not the homie.
Exactly. You are the accountant.
I'm the accountant.
Yes.
You don't ignore your lawyer and you don't ignore your accountant.
Those are the two people you don't ignore.
Well, that's like the small business owners and entrepreneurs. I know a lot of them, and there's a lot of them are really great, and some of them honestly just aren't. And the reason why is because they get this attitude of like, well, I'm going to do this, but like I don't like the business part. Like I'm just gonna I don't
I really
do
like
that.
The creative part.
And it doesn't.
Part.
It's like, well, then unfortunately, then you're being an idiot. Like you you can't run a business and not just do the business part. Like you have to, and you hire people on to help you if you're not good at it. Yeah, or if you can't do it, and for their expertise, and so that they can do it better than you ever could, because you didn't go to school for it and get the training for it. But at the end of the day, you do at least need to have an understanding of how those working parts move. Right.
Yeah, and it also gives you the discipline that you may not naturally have. Your accountant gives you that discipline because he does email you or call you or ask you for things or let you know when deadlines are coming up. And so you hire your accountant for that purpose, to help structure your business, and then you ignore the structure. It is just it doesn't make sense. So if you hire an accountant, do what he says. Take his phone calls. You can't bury your head in the sand. Right. It's your money ultimately. Right. And like Korey said, he made a great point. I can only help you as much as you'll allow me to. Right. And you have to be involved too at some level, because at the end of the day, you're responsible as a small business owner for your taxes and tax season. Exactly. Right? Exactly. So, you know what, Korey? It's always never long enough. I always want you to promise me you'll come back and give us more good advice. And this will be airing in time for you guys to get your taxes in and make it easy on Korey. So at the beginning, I asked him for his information. He gave it. Use him. We agree with what you said today, and thank you so much again for coming in.
Thank you again for
during
having
such
me.
A busy season.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No problem. Thank you for having me.